Hello there. This is a video I've been thinking about making for quite some time, and well, various things have led me to actually get around to doing it at last. So, yeah, the whole area of magic, the esoteric arts, is a minefield of misconceptions, misunderstandings, and false information mixed in with stuff that is actually true. So for many people as outside observers, it's very difficult to actually know what is correct and what's not. I suppose a modern term is misinformation, isn't it, that people use, or fake news, I suppose, you know. But I mean, that's always been a problem throughout human history of incorrect information leading people to make false assumptions and act on a premise that's not actually real or correct. And it's continued throughout history and is as much true today as it's ever been, perhaps even more so, because with the availability of all kinds of information on the internet, some of that information is just urban myth and quite often absolute rubbish. So let me start with really what it really means. Esoteric and the words occult as well really basically mean hidden. It's about hidden information, hidden knowledge. So, I mean, it's long been considered that this sort of arcane knowledge is dangerous in the hands of people who don't have a sense of responsibility, or maybe don't have the mental capacity, or possibly even, you could say, the intelligence to use it in a sensible and wise way. So this hidden knowledge is obviously linked with not just of spirituality and general wisdom, but the use of magic as well. And along with that, there are benefits to doing it and also risks. Now, depending on your upbringing, you may be of the belief that everything connected with magic is evil. Certainly some people who are sort of fundamentalist Christians, and you could say to the same extent with certain Muslims as well, believe that any use of magic or anything associated with that is evil and coming from the devil. Now, there's a few lines in the Old Testament that refer to this. I think Deuteronomy in particular, which would, be used as justification for saying that all magic is evil. Obviously the concept of Satan or the devil is a very ancient one. It goes way back beyond Christianity or even Judaism, and you can trace back sort of evil to the beginnings of known culture that was written down in Sumeria. I've made a video about this previously, which I think I'll put that at the end as as a link at the end of the video. You can watch that if you're interested. So I won't go into the origins of Satan, the devil, etc., Beelzebub, all these many other names that you have for the sort of negative, dark, destructive, evil force in the world. But this has become, in the last couple of millennia, to be linked with the use of magic. But as I said, it's actually mentioned in the Bible about witches And witches tend to get thrown in along with sorcerers, magicians, all kinds of magical practitioners, as if they're all exactly the same thing. And in many cases, there's no real necessary link between good and evil with many of these names. There are exceptions, obviously. Things like a necromancer is one that's very clearly linked with what you call the left-hand path and dealing with death, and is generally regarded as sort of an evil type of sorcerer. But in general, you could say in the history of magic, practitioners are, as often as not, ambivalent. They're neither necessarily good or bad. So if you come through the history of magic, you see Hermetic magic becoming very much a powerful influence on the modern movement. You've got there's a Kabbalah, a viewpoint of left and right hand. The right hand representing goodness or God, and the left representing evil and the devil, and they're represented usually as light and dark. I'm left-handed myself, actually, but that was often regarded as a sign as evil, because the left hand was associated with darkness, with the devil, with bad. Although these days we know it's just a genetic sort of I don't know if you call it an anomaly. Sorry about that. I've always found that word very difficult to say. It's just one of many genetic variants you get. It's got no actual links to anything. Although it would appear that people who are left-handed do seem to use their right side of their brain a lot more. And interestingly, that's something that's tied in with magic and its use, and creativity, using the right-hand part of your brain. So, getting back to where I was, if you look at Judaism, in the past you'll find there were many practitioners of magic within the Jewish faith. So although it may say in Deuteronomy and elsewhere about magic and witchcraft being prohibited, King Solomon himself was seemingly a great magical practitioner, and there are texts that are named after him, and rituals. So I'm not going to go into the details of what those are. You can look them up yourself if you're interested. And from ancient times through to the Renaissance, you have Jewish practitioners and magicians, including sort of famous people like Eliphas Levi, and a more modern one, Israel Regardie, who's sort of part of the modern magical movement. Now, these people certainly wouldn't be labelled as evil, as far as I know. They were, I suppose, explorers, inquirers, equivalent in many cases, certainly in Renaissance people, of scientists of their age. They were trying to push the limits of human knowledge. They weren't generally seeking to be working on behalf of the devil or whatever personification of evil you might want to call it. But now you'll see the same of Christians as well. There were Christian magical practitioners. Certainly the Rosicrucians were overtly very Christian, but they also practiced magic as well. So this is a very sort of fundamentalist belief. You find similar belief in Islam, where the only power that is acceptable is that comes directly through God, through what they call Allah, and any other forms of practice are unacceptable to the more extreme believers. So that kind of very much parallels the sort of Bible thumping Christian view. But I think the reality is actually somewhat different. When you go beyond the fear mongering and like a couple of lines of the Bible and look at the actual history of the esoteric arts, you'll find a very different situation. As I said earlier, it can be very much an ambivalent situation where you have, on one side, you have the dark magician, who very much is in league with the forces of darkness, if you like. They may choose to work with demonic forces, and they would have no problem in doing bad things to people, such as putting curses on somebody. And you have in the middle this of the ambivalent practitioner. Quite often these people, who you could say they're grey, if you like, are they're pretty impartial. They don't really take a side. So if somebody wanted, say, revenge on some mean person who'd done something to them, or what they perceive as that, they might go and visit a magician or a witch and ask them to put a curse on some certain person. And the ambivalent witch will do that. The same when it comes to, say, somebody wanting a love spell done for them. Even though it sort of breaks the free will of the person who is going to be sort of going to be charmed, if you will, they'll do it. If somebody wants their granny healed, they'll also do that. So, the grey witch, it straddles both sides of the light and the dark. They will do good things, they will do bad things, and they will do sort of questionable things which are, subjectively good or bad. And then, of course, you have what's often referred to as the white witch or white magician, who are people who do magic exclusively for good, and often in the name of a higher power, in the name of God, or words to that effect. And these people are not going to do things like cursing somebody or doing a love spell to force somebody to fall in love with somebody else. That would be considered unethical. But unfortunately, you have a situation today where modern practitioners often try to gaslight people and then go like, all these witches were great and they never did any harm to anybody, and all these people that were killed during the witch trials were all lovely people. And, that's just not true. Like, it's also not true that all these people were women. I think about 35% of the people who were executed were actually men. And rather than being burned, 95% or more were actually hanged. Some cases people were drowned, and very occasionally people were burned. But generally speaking, burning was for religious heretics, not for practitioners of magic or the dark arts or whatever they've been labelled with. They, as I said, they were usually hanged. So, the modern esoteric alternative movement is pushing a lie, basically, that these were all innocent victims. And, it is horrible that they were executed. It is an awful thing to have done. But the suggestion that every one of these people was entirely harmless and just some old biddy, fiddling with herbs and healing the sick. That's just so inaccurate, and that could be very easily proven. All you have to do is look at any sort of medieval or Renaissance or even more modern grimoire, and you'll very easily find quite horrific spells which are designed purely to cause harm to people. The fact that these even exist is proof that practitioners of magic were actually actively using magic to harm people. I mean, otherwise they wouldn't exist. And, there's huge numbers of grimoires that have been destroyed, and yet we still have plenty in existence that prove malevolent and, frankly, evil spells have been used by people for hundreds and hundreds of years. In fact, you even go back to the Egyptian period, you'll find spells that were being written down on walls in hieroglyphs, which some are for protection, some are to cause harm. So that shows you this sort of, different sides of magical practice going back thousands and thousands of years. And if you're really interested in the history of magic, there's a particular guy who is a modern scholar of magic, and including Judaic magic, because, well, he is actually a modern Jewish scholar, and his name is Dr. Justin Sledge. And I can think of no better person who you could go to, certainly online, if you want to learn about the history of magic. He has his own channel called Esoteric, which I'm going to link in the description, which is, in my opinion, a fantastic channel and one of the best places you can go to learn about this subject, because he not only is he very erudite, he discusses all this in fairly simple layman's terms, and I'd say he's very impartial as well. So I think he gives you a very balanced view on the whole subject. Anyway, I'm not going to go into the history of magic. As I said, you could go to his channel if you want to find out all about that. But if you look at the channel, you'll find that he discusses all kinds of magic, both good and bad, and it is historically well known by people involved in the magical arts that there are both good and bad people involved in it now and have been throughout history. And anybody who tries to tell you different is gaslighting you. They're just telling you a load of codswallop. So really, we have a situation where it's very much akin to technology in many ways. You could use weapons as tools. Like, for instance, a knife, you could use it as a tool. You could use a gun to go out hunting and just catch something that you wanted to eat. But you can always use them to kill people as well. In some cases, if you're defending your family from like a bear or from some horrible intruder who intends to kill all your family and you as well, then you'd be justified in using weapons. But generally speaking, it's not something that you'd associate with goodness. Really, it's not something that any decent, honourable, or good person would wish to do, is to have to use weapons to kill. The weapon itself, the sword, the gun, the knife, they are not evil in themselves. They're not good. They are ambivalent. They don't have an opinion. They don't care. They just serve a purpose. They're a tool. And that's analogy, I think, is applicable to magic itself and the esoteric arts. The actual knowledge and ability itself is not evil, in my opinion, not in the slightest. What is evil is men's hearts sometimes. So there are obviously books of spells of various types written down by people in the past who obviously wrote them for their own use, and they have then been retained and passed down over many years, sometimes many centuries. In the case of books that have both, you could say that probably the practitioner who wrote it was ambivalent. They were happy to do either good or bad. You will find collections of magical instructions and spells which are purely written by people on the left-hand path. Obviously, you could say that these people were demonic, they were evil, they may even have been servants of Satan, if you like, because that is an area that very much does exist through the history of magic, which I'll come to in a minute. And as I said, you've got the ambivalent collections, and then you also have collections of spells which are designed purely to help people, to bring prosperity, maybe to help them find love without influencing anyone's free will, to heal people who are horribly sick, etc., or from to protect them from evil forces, etc. Often very much in defense against dark magic and demonic forces. You'll find in the collections written by what you call white witches or white magicians. So many people sort of fall in the middle. They don't really fall in one camp or the other. They'd be grey, if you like. As for myself, I don't really like these labels, but I would say I'm very much on the side of the light, on the right-hand path, and I would be very much inclined to help protect people from those that are on the left-hand path. And if there's anything I feel ethically uncomfortable about, I certainly wouldn't give any assistance to someone who wanted me to cause harm to somebody else, or to help sway somebody against their will. I think that would be extremely unethical. So we have a situation today where if you read memes on the internet and various things on groups about New Age and the modern pagan movement, etc., magic, witches groups, etc., and pages, often you'll find these very misleading memes that tell you that everybody's great, nobody did anything wrong ever, and everyone was horribly mistreated for nothing, and there's no such thing as a bad witch, or there's no such thing as Satanists, which is very, very untrue. You can find very clear evidence, certainly going back into the Middle Ages, of Satanism and child sacrifice amongst magical practitioners and secret societies. Of course, if you go back earlier ages, people such as the Phoenicians and the Canaanites were sacrificing children to their god. And it was quite a common thing to do in ancient times. If you go back a few thousand years, not associated with evil as such, but associated with worship of gods and trying to placate them. You'll even find that in much later times, such as the Aztecs sacrificing people to the sun. It wasn't in worship of like some kind of demonic force. They actually believed that if they didn't do this and placate the sun, that the world might come to an end and everything would collapse. They were obviously very misguided, but it wasn't coming from a belief in Satan or a desire to do evil. Although in effect their behavior did end up being quite evil, really. I mean, it's just totally unacceptable to kill people in worship of a god, in my opinion. But that's a very different thing from actually deliberately and knowingly taking a life in honor of the forces of chaos and darkness and the powers of evil, which is something that has been going on for a long time within magical practice. There are people who do worship evil deities and who worship the embodiment of evil in the form of the devil or Satan, Beelzebub, whatever name you want to give to this person, who's often portrayed as masculine. But, I mean, if you look at the Judeo-Christian lore, angels are asexual. So Lucifer, who was actually a Roman god who got transformed into, the Christian devil, Lucifer or Beelzebub, was an angel, a fallen angel, who ends up in hell, supposedly, and isn't actually male or female. So being referred to as she or as he is sort of, I suppose, inaccurate if you believe, the mythology associated with the fall of Lucifer to become the devil. But unfortunately, these people who do practice Satanism, they are quite happy to do bad things to people. They will curse people. I myself have been the recipient of many, many curses over time. And but generally they've had no effect on me. I can think of twice when some effect has been successful. I'm still here, There was one attempt, actually, I would say, was to kill me, and it was quite a serious attack and had quite a large effect on me. But as you can see, I'm still here. So this idea of evil people using magic is a very, very real one, and I have had to use my own skills to try to help people who have been cursed, who've been attacked by demonic forces. And if you've ever been in that situation yourself, you will know that it is real. It isn't imaginary. And there are obviously multitudes of demons in the world, but some of these confrontations, if you like, may be just pure chance, if you like, where they weren't sent by anybody. But on other occasions, they are literally summoned and sent to attack people by nefarious magicians and followers of the dark arts. So, that's a very, very serious thing, and quite horrific, in my opinion. Anybody who would do such a thing has got absolutely no morals and no ethics whatsoever. And ethics is supposed to be a big thing in the use of magic, but I would say to a large extent it's very much glossed over. There are certain things you'll find which are mentioned in various magical paths. One being there's the Wiccan thing, harm no one, do what they wilt, or words to that effect. But I think many practitioners of magic don't actually believe in this. They think they can do whatever they want. I mean, Aleister Crowley, was someone who didn't seem to really believe that. I mean, I've talked to various people about him. I've read a biography of his, and I've read some of his books, but I would say he was at best ambivalent, and if anything more inclined towards the left-hand path. And he said, do what thou wilt is the whole of the law. Basically, you can do whatever the hell you want, which would very much be a left-hand path belief, that you can just do whatever you want without penalty. But I mean, anyone who knows anything much about his life knows that he not only was he very arrogant, but he actually ended his life in a horrible state, in dire poverty and very unwell, with serious addiction problem as well. And he caused tremendous harm to many people, especially the women in his life. So, I mean, again, I'm not going to go into the history of his life, but you can find out all about him in various biographies, and there's a lot about him on the internet. So, I mean, there are advocates for Crowley who think he was great, but I'm not one of them. I'll be honest about that. I think he was a genius, but very much a twisted and perhaps evil genius. So, you've got people who are going to tell you that all these people were great, like Aleister Crowley was wonderful and he never did any real harm and it's all just hysteria. I would advise you not to listen to that and perhaps go check out people like him for yourself and make your own decision. And you have a similar situation with Satanism. You have a certain section of the magical community who argue that Luciferianism is completely harmless, it's not connected with Satan in any way, that some organizations like the Church of Satan, it's all very ironic and they don't actually worship Satan, it's all like self-empowerment, what it's really about. And then you've got sort of not so public satanic organizations. A bit less well known would be like the Temple of Set, a satanic temple maybe, and the Order of the Nine Angles. Some of these organizations, the lesser well known ones, yeah, they are extremely scary indeed, and you'd be well advised to stay away from them. But the satanic sort of community, they like to present themselves as utterly harmless, when that couldn't be anything more from the truth. It's just a way of trying to seduce people, especially young people, to get them to join. They want to be cool and trendy, and so that they can recruit young people. And once you become part of it, you can be very easily corrupted and seduced by it all. But again, that's something that a lot of people who are involved in the esoteric community, especially sort of non-Christian practitioners, would often don't like to address this question about Satanism. They feel embarrassed by it, and they feel it brings the whole area of magic in sort of disrepute. And in a way it does, but I think if you're honest, you can't really shy away from this. You have to address the truth that there are people involved in magic who are evil. There are people who are involved particularly in Satanism, and I would say most of them are either idiots or very naive or just young and very easily influenced, or they are quite often actually evil people who are trying to conceal the truth about who they actually are and what their beliefs actually really are. I think the key to it all is in the symbolism. If you look at the paraphernalia that's associated with Satanism and the modern satanic movement, it's very obvious. Look at the symbols, the sigils, the statues, all the accoutrement of their practice, and that tells you who these people are and what they actually do. So, okay, there's been the satanic panic of the 80s, and you could say a lot of sort of ultra-Christian extremists, etc. They get in a big old panic about everything, and they're screaming from the rooftops about Satan all the time. Well, I would say, yes, they're a bit excessive, but they are not entirely wrong. They are not wrong, because there is nothing really I can see within the satanic movement that can recommend it to me. And I'm someone who's been involved in the study of the esoteric arts since I was about 20 when I first got interested in studying Kabbalah and Hermeticism and sort of higher ritual magic and all that kind of thing. It's something I've departed from long ago, but that's the position I started from, and that's like about 35 years ago. So I think, I'd like to think I know what I'm talking about. But from my studies of the left-hand path as an observer and researcher, and from my observations of the modern satanic movement, there is absolutely nothing in it that I could recommend to anybody at all. So I think you have to be really careful if you're going to get involved in the magical arts. There's a hell of a lot of ethical considerations and a great need for responsibility and accounting for your actions. So I think it's very, very easy to go off onto the wrong path or in the wrong direction with this. And that's what happens to some people. So I think one of the worst things really is the lack of honesty and transparency about what the different types of esoteric paths are and what their values are. I think if people aren't prepared to be honest about the dark side of magic and the fact that there are bad people who are practitioners in virtually every single path I could think of, there are some. And that's a bit of an embarrassment, really. By failing to address that, it's only sort of empowers those who are on the dark side, if you will. And, people when they're young and they're beginning and they're starting out, they are perhaps at that time the most vulnerable to influence. And I'd like people to be more honest about this in order to perhaps help protect people from malign influence, because sometimes these people are not, they're not transparent. The average Satanist isn't going to be walking down the street with a pentagram wearing black and red and a pair of horns on their head going "Hail Satan" every 5 seconds. That's not how they operate. Many of these people who are actually evil, they're evil people, some of them, are masquerading as good people. They've infiltrated Christianity, they've infiltrated Judaism, Islam, the New Age, paganism, all kinds of paganism, Druidry, Wicca, you name it. Every single religious path that you can think of has to some extent been infiltrated by overt Satanists and contains people who are evil. They may not necessarily be identifying as a Satanist, but there are people who serve the dark and demonic and malign forces in this world. And people need to be aware of that. If you don't understand this, then how can you protect yourself from bad influences? So, there's people who won't thank me for making this video because, they think, well, New Age religion, paganism's got a bad enough reputation already without somebody actually saying that, there are actually bad people. But, that's the truth. That is the truth here. There are bad people within every religion. Some of them are just bad people. Some of them are magical practitioners and Satanists, unfortunately. And certainly within the overt magical community, there's far more bad people than I would like to see. I wouldn't say it's a majority by any means, but, one would hope it would be, 1 or 2% of people involved in the magical arts are bad people. But I'm afraid it's a lot higher than that, a lot higher than that, which is very unfortunate. And I guess you just have to watch out for these people. I think one key thing when you look at dealing with other people is often your intuition will give you a warning about people, but ultimately it's how people act that is actually reveals who they are rather than what they say. I think there's a biblical expression, by their fruits will you know them. That's actually a very true expression regardless of your religious beliefs. So, people who are underhand, devious, evil, they may say very nice things. They may come out with all kinds of platitudes and they may smile at you, but over time it's their actions that reveal who they actually are. So ultimately that is the litmus test for bad people, really. Not the words that come out of their mouths, but actually how they behave towards other people. And you could say animals as well. People often say, someone that's cruel to animals is probably someone who you shouldn't trust. And I'd be inclined to agree with that. So, many of the principles you would apply to general life, they also apply here in the realm of magic and esoteric arts. Who can you trust? Well, basically, you have to follow your instinct, and you need to observe what people say, and more importantly, what they actually do. So I think I pretty much covered everything I wanted to say. And it's really just more of a warning than anything. If you are interested in the esoteric arts, you need to be careful. You need to be cautious. You need to take time and don't go rushing in like a fool. And be careful who you listen to. And, be careful who you might choose to be someone to instruct you. Because it's very often the case that people are misdirected or misled. But in time, these things usually come out. The truth comes out in the wash, as they say. So if you're cautious and if you use your common sense and your intuition, you will hopefully make the right choices. But please don't be fooled. When you hear these people trying to tell you that there's nobody doing any harm in the magical world, and it's all propaganda, well, I would be very doubtful of these people that they would even say that, because anyone with any common sense who's been involved in the magical arts for more than like 10 minutes actually knows the truth, that there is a mixture of all kinds of people, both good and bad, within the esoteric community, and it has always been that way for thousands of years, and it's not going to change anytime soon, unfortunately. So anyway, I could blather on for a lot longer, but I think I'm going to draw it to a close there. It's over 40 minutes already. So anyway, if you're still here, thank you for listening to the end. I hope you found that informative and interesting. I've tried to be as honest and transparent as I can in discussing this subject. And if you did enjoy it, please give me a like, and feel free to subscribe. And you can always share the video as well if you like. And thank you very much for watching. Bye for now.